We'll probably end up for people logging back in again, um, repeating some of the questions on the robocalls because that does seem to be kind of a curiosity on a national level as well. So we're getting some national questions there. So we'll see if this reporter does actually log in. All right. Hi, Robert. Glad you're back. I wanted to introduce you to some folks so that they can put a name and a face and an email address to it. So thank you for joining us in the middle of your evening. Appreciate that. I've got Brett online as well, and he's going to give a quick overview of the situational awareness dashboard that we put together with Office of Emergency Management. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started again. This is intended to be an informal conversation. We wanted to try and make this as approachable as possible. That may be the wrong term to use, but we just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to get your questions answered fairly quickly, as well as give us an opportunity to only have to answer questions once or twice instead of answering the same question to 8 different people across the course of the night. So if you throw questions in the chat, I'll try and catch them over there. Things we're going to look at here in the next couple minutes, we're going to do a quick recap of some of the numbers that we were talking about a little while ago, giving some reference to turnout numbers and how increased those turnouts are, how much absentee has changed the profile of the voting population in Idaho here. And then we're going to take a look at the situational awareness tool. So feel free to unmute and ask questions at any point in time, or if we're in the middle of the demo, go ahead and throw them in the chat and we'll try and address them that way, just in case someone else is recording. So we talked about some of the early turnout numbers using a reference point. Ada County, today they're looking at 80,900. Again, these are relative numbers from the moment we pulled them. So these are still changing. Well, with polls closed in Ada County, they're not changing anymore, but I didn't pull new ones. 261, a little over 261,000 voters in Ada County. If we look at the 2016 numbers, and again, Ada County could still have absentees that they're processing, plus they still need to get their
on the upper hands. Special guest Flo challenges the hand models to show off the ease of comparing rates with Progressive's Home Quote Explorer. International hand model John gets personal.
Your wayward pinky is grotesque.
Then, a high-stakes patty cake battle royale ends in triumph.
You have the upper hand.
It's a race to the lowest rate, and so much more. Only on the upper hands.
Are all retinol serums created equal? No. New No. 7 Advanced Retinol Night Concentrate from America's #1 serum brand. 5 times more retinol than the #1 retinol serum, yet formulated to be gentle on your skin, delivering the combined power of retinol and Matrixyl 3000 Plus. Results after just one night. 5 times more retinol than the #1 retinol serum. New No. 7 Advanced Retinol Night Concentrate. No. 7.
It's an epic ending to an unforgettable season.
I'm gonna win it.
All right, you're looking live inside the Kootenai County Elections Office up in Coeur d'Alene. The polls in southern Idaho closed about a half hour ago, but the polls in the northern half of the state are still open for about another 30 minutes. We're going to get back to NBC programming in just a few minutes, but let's go over to Brian. He's in the studio with us tonight with the touch screen, and some of those states are starting to change color.
So these states here, yeah, we're watching these progress through the night just like they are on the national coverage. And you can kind of see how things are kind of shades of red or shades of blue, which is what we're watching. Texas, for example, kind of a pinkish salmon color right now. 55% reporting. We're looking at 51% so far for Trump. Biden at 48%. You can see the numbers broken down for Jorgensen and Hawkins beyond that. But this is how we're going to watch these numbers for the rest of this evening kind of play out. You can see some of these have clinched. Colorado already claimed 75% for Biden at 57% of the votes going there. So we're going to kind of watch again. A lot of these not yet named or given to the candidate just yet. Just some of those with some asterisks. Illinois going to Biden. Kentucky going to Trump. Indiana right now being called at 66% going to Trump. So again, we'll watch some of these colors change. The lighter colors could go either way at this point, and we'll see how that plays out. Still waiting for the western states. Polls closing about 30 minutes ago here in southern Idaho. And as we get toward the next 30 minutes, we'll see California, Washington, Oregon, North Idaho, and Nevada also drop in, and we'll get to see some of these numbers come in for Idaho. And then as we get into that, we're going to see with this this instrument here for tonight, we're going to see how the counties break down for the rest of the evening when it comes to Idaho. For example, we usually would see a lot of red, but Ada County last in 2016, kind of on the verge. It was dominating on the Republican side, 47%, and then we went to 39% for Democrats there. So we're watching Ada County, Valley County, kind of on the verge as well. The only counties that went blue last time, Latah County went blue, and Blaine County, and then Teton County, way over here on the other side, had a little bit of a red tinge to it, or a little bit of a lighter red tinge to it. So we'll be watching those counties as well, and this is how we're going to break this down as we go through the rest of the evening. Mark?
All right, for the folks that are just joining us, there were some robocalls that were sent to some voters today saying to stay home. Secretary of State says they were bogus and don't stay home and try to vote tomorrow. 8 o'clock was when the polls closed. All right, thanks for joining us. Don't forget, we're going to be live on KTVB.com starting at 8:30 right now, in fact, for digital coverage, and then of course at 10 o'clock we're live here on Idaho's News Channel 7. Stick around, more election coverage straight ahead. Aren't we? I think we are live on KTVB.com. and also on the YouTube channel. So those of you that are watching us on KTVB.com and the KTVB YouTube channel, you're going to get a little look behind the scenes for the next 45 minutes or so. You've got Kim and Brian. Hi, you guys. We also have Joe and Joey in the field. And you know, it usually takes a little while for our viewers to start tuning in. So I would like to do something right now, Kim, and I think you would echo this. I would like to thank the people that are behind the scenes. That I've been in the business for 40 years. I know, Kim, since you're only 27, you've only been in the business for 6. Yeah. Brian as well has been in longer than Larry. So what I'd like to do now is thank some of the people that you don't see that are behind the scenes. Like Ray Martinez in the control room, our director. He's been in the business nearly 40 years. Ray has done countless elections, and he is switching tonight. Also, Melissa is on audio. Hassan is manning the studio, making sure that our wireless mics are queued up and charged up. You got Dakota in master control. You got AJ and Al, our engineers, making sure that all of our equipment is running with perfection. And I want to thank those guys. I also want to thank the folks in the newsroom. We got Lisa and Gary and Shanti and Cohen and Darren and Lucas at home and Natalie and countless other people that I know that I'm going to forget. And Kim and Brian throw some names in there too. I just want to thank our entire team for putting together an amazing election 2020, and we're happy that you guys get to be a part of it as well. All right, we're going to go around the horn a little bit, but first, let's send it to Joe. He's at the Ada County Elections headquarters, where we showed you the live shot earlier, Joe. It was pretty amazing. Before the polls closed, there were a couple of elections workers that were sitting at the desk in front of a desktop. But then all of a sudden, the polls closed at 8 o'clock, and that place looked like Union Station. What's it like there now?
Well, just on the other side of this glass, Mark, that's where a lot of the work is going on right now. They're starting to file the final absentee ballots, the final ballots that were dropped into those drop boxes that were just cleared at 8 o'clock around Ada County. So a lot of the ballots are still making their way here to Ada County election headquarters. And we're really, though, expecting to have a large drop of results between about 9:15 and 9:30. Ada County Clerk Phil McGrain tells me with the overwhelming amount of results that we had from absentee ballots, they're going to be able to give us some pretty meaningful results just from all of those, high volume of absentee and early voting. When we talk about breaking records here in Ada County and Idaho, their turnout was incredible. Before Election Day even started, we had more than half of Idahoans already cast their vote. So it's really been a record-breaking race in so many different ways, Mark. And again, just on the other side of this glass over here, they're getting ready to start really releasing some of those results. They got to wait till 9 o'clock Mountain Time, because that's when the polls close up with our friends in North Idaho, 8 o'clock local time in the Pacific time zone. So really, we're going to see some real meaningful results here. And I guess, 45 minutes, Mark. But we saw some really interesting trends throughout the day. A majority of the early voters were Democrats, and a majority in Ada County. And the majority of people that actually went to the polls today, Republicans or independents. Of course, Democrats went out as well, but we saw a large chunk of them actually from the Republican Party. So, Mark, some of those preliminary results, again, will start coming out about 45 minutes, but a lot of work going on this side of the glass.
Boy, I'll say, you got to feel for those guys. It's going to be a late night for them, for sure. All right, Kim, what are some of your initial takes that you've got as this night has yet to play out in Idaho, obviously, but it is nationally?
Well, I think obviously what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is the historic turnout, right? You mentioned I'm only 27 years old and this is just my third election, but never before have I seen people waiting right up until 8 o'clock. We had live shots this afternoon from Ada County Elections headquarters and then from Canyon County at a couple of different locations. And lines. I don't recall the last time that I saw a line for an Idaho election. How about you, Mark?
Well, 4 years ago, 2016, when a line, you said?
Yeah. On election day, for day of voting.
Yeah, I waited 90 minutes to vote in 2016.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
In Eagle. And it was, at that time, they talked about record numbers of voting, with the state had about 75% of registered voters that voted. But remember, there was no pandemic then.
Yeah.
Folks didn't vote absentee or early like they did this year. Remember, we've got over 1 million registered voters in the state, and nearly half of them voted early or absentee. That is just remarkable, and maybe the way of the future as well.
Well, Joe, are you still there? Is Joe, can we, I've got a couple questions.
I'm still here.
Hey, Joe, I've got a couple questions for you. So you're mentioning the folks behind the glass right there. Obviously, they're going to be very busy. This is one of their busiest nights of every 4 years, right? But talk through the process. So we've had absentee ballot voting going on for quite some time now. Of course, we had the early voting going on. So as those ballots have been making their way to each county clerk's office, to each headquarters, what is the process from there?
Well, with the absentee ballots that we saw, and it was actually unique this election because county clerks across Idaho, they were allowed to actually start processing, not counting, but they're allowed to start processing those ballots that came in through absentee. Usually you'd have to wait till Election Day to actually start going through all of those, but because of a bill that was passed during the special session over the summer, it allowed county clerks that extra week to get going. So when we say process the ballots, of course, if you've seen an absentee ballot, there's a lot of different pieces that are inside of it. What the poll workers are doing and what they've done all week and continuing to finish it up here is they remove all the ballots, they flatten it out, they make sure all the signatures are good to go. Then they start really feeding those absentee ballots through the system. And then now after the 8 o'clock mark, they can start tabulating and taking a look at that. Of course, all the precinct results that are around the state, those get collated and put into a central location. And then it's simply just adding everything up. You start doing the math. And when we talk about having meaningful results really about shortly after 9 o'clock, that's because of the heavy use of the absentee ballots that we saw. This election, it far surpassed anything we've ever seen, specifically in the presidential cycle, in terms of how much volume there was of those absentee ballots coming through, as well as Idahoans that were also doing early voting. We saw way more people that are actually casting a vote before today on Election Day than we will actually see today. Something also incredible, I was talking with Clerk McGrain here in Ada County. He told me that more than 80% of Ada County residents that are registered have cast their vote, and 80% for election turnout is pretty incredible, Kim.
It's huge, yeah. And I'm glad you touched on the difference between processing those ballots and then counting those ballots. Because that's what they've been doing right up until that 8 o'clock deadline, right, Joe? Is that they've been processing those absentee ballots, and then now they'll actually start counting them because the polls have officially closed in southern Idaho, correct?
Yeah, correct. And that's something that people have asked us and asked other reporters, say, well, if they're having these ballots processed early, well, then you probably know some early results. And nobody knows any results until they're starting to be counted after 8 o'clock. And so there's a lot of data that I've been following here on the Ada County election website in terms of voter turnout. Something interesting, actually, I'd like to point out, this is actually a map by district, and you can't quite see it on my screen, but it'll tell you actually what the poll volume was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And something interesting that we saw this year at a majority of the precincts, we saw higher traffic actually earlier in the day. And of course, we did see some lines after work, after 5 o'clock, the dinner rush, the after work rush. But talking with Clerk McGrain, he and I were going over some of these numbers. It's interesting to note that a lot of people went out early this morning and voted. Of course, we covered the fact that a lot of Idahoans, a lot of people in Ada County, they actually did all of their stuff in advance, early voting, absentee. But a little bit of a different trend than we saw in years past, with not this huge amount of people at the polls later in the afternoon. We saw people show up to the polls early, really between 8 a.m. and noon, and make sure that they got their vote in early in the day.
Interesting. Yeah. And maybe perhaps anticipating those lines that we've been seeing at some locations.
Yeah,
Mark?
in Canyon County, we saw in Canyon County, but again, Joe, as you mentioned earlier on an earlier cut-in, it was moving pretty quickly. Kim, you knew that I was going to forget somebody
Who'd
in my little thank you. I forgot Jeremy, and I forgot Stella. Stella is our receptionist, and there have been a lot of phone calls that she has been fielding today and tonight from folks that want to know what's going on, who's, where things are happening. So I want to thank Stella for hanging with us. All right, I want to go now to Brian, because Brian, this is an interactive map that you have been showing off tonight, and obviously, before we get the numbers in, we can't really show anything in Idaho. Obviously, no. Idaho is going to stay black for about another 45 minutes, but the rest of the country is starting to take shape.
It is starting to take shape, and you can see by the colors that the national maps or the national broadcasts are showing. These are kind of what we're seeing here as well, as you kind of take a look. The different shades, different hues, obviously showing how much into that category they are going. Red being Republican, blue being Democrat. And you can kind of see how this plays out, where we can just kind of move around the country. Arkansas, and there's 6 electoral votes. Those are going to Trump right now. It's 62% coming in. They've given the state of Arkansas to Trump, and he's beaten Biden by 30, or I should say almost about 30%. And you can see Jorgensen getting about 1%. But you can see how it kind of plays out. Florida still in contention in their 29 electoral votes. You can see it's a kind of a pink salmon color. Still too early to call, even though we have 98% reporting from Florida, 51 to 48. There's going to be a whole lot of counting that goes on over the next several days, because those 29 electoral votes, obviously, you know this, very important, and they play a big role and have been for many years.
But some news agencies have already called Florida.
Yeah, but again, this is where we kind of look at that 51% to 48, 98%. You can kind of do that, but there's a lot of ballots out there that still, we're waiting for military ballots. We're still waiting for absentee ballots to be counted. So you can say, yeah, this is going Donald Trump's way, President Trump's way, but right now, but there's still a little bit, as we know, there's a lot that can happen over the next 12, 24, 36, even 72 hours.
What about the Sun Belt? Biden was really hoping that he was going to be able to get one of the Sun Belt states. Doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Georgia's still up for grabs, by the way. We got 16 votes there, but 58% Trump. About 10 points ahead, 11 points ahead right now. So we're seeing a little bit, but other than that, as you mentioned, we're looking at Louisiana going to Trump, Mississippi going to Trump, Tennessee, and as you mentioned, Arkansas, Kentucky. And so 94% of Kentucky coming in. And if we move over here to this Electoral College map, you can kind of see how things are playing out. But Biden getting 131 to 105. Again, still up for grabs. Texas, a big one at 38. With their electoral votes. So we're still waiting to see what that turns out. If we kind of look at how that's playing out voter-wise as we go to Texas, 65% reporting, you can see that Trump holds a slim lead at 51% to 48%, and you can see nearly 5 million votes, 4.5 million votes for Biden. That's happening in Texas. A lot of people thinking Texas has a chance to go blue this year. Still waiting to see how that one plays out. The other battleground state would be Wisconsin and a next door neighbor of Minnesota. You can see how things play out there. Minnesota leaning right now toward Biden. Wisconsin getting their 10 electoral votes. Right now, kind of leaning toward the Trump realm. Both of them right around 50 to 55% when it comes to precincts reporting. So as you move further out west, this is when the polls close. Montana and their 3 votes looking towards Biden right now, but again, only 16%. So we're going to watch a lot of these colors shift and move around as we get through the night. What we also want to watch when we get into the Idaho totals, when they start to come in, is looking at this based on history. What this map used to look like, or what did look like in 2016, looked a lot like this, where we did see a couple of blue spots with Latah County and Blaine County. That's how those played out as we went into 2016. And just a little bit of a hint in Teton County and even Ada County. That's the area that we were going to be watching tonight, because those have a possibility that we could see that shift, whereas 2016, they were just on the cusp, 47% to 39%. Ada County could make a flip this season, or this election season. We'll see how that plays out. Valley County also, back in 2012, they were a little bit more on the lighter side when it comes to voting for Republicans over Democrats. They were a little bit lighter red, and only about 1,000 votes separated the difference between Democrat and Republican in 2016. So those are the kind of hot spots we're going to be watching. We're also going to be looking at Senate races for the state of Idaho. Jordan and Risch coming through. We have the House seats that are up for grabs between Soto and Fulcher, the incumbent Fulcher. And we'll also be looking at House District 2 between Swisher and Simpson, pro-life and law also in there as well. Then we can keep a track, just like the national cases or the national broadcasts are, of what's happening in the Senate and the balance of power, because right now it is being held by the Republicans. But there could be a swing tonight that pushes some of those votes that a lot of people are counting on in the Senate, and that if it goes to Biden, well, then we could see a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, which of course means a lot because the House seems to be holding on to its Democratic positions right now. Mark?
All right, I want to bring in Dr. Stephanie Witt. She, of course, political scientist at Boise State University and has been for decades. And all right, this is that time that we like to think in the sports world. It's kind of pregame before the game here in Idaho. We haven't kicked off the ball. The sides have been set. We haven't kicked off the ball yet, but what do you see? How do you see tonight playing out here in Idaho?
Well, I think you've identified the big story in Idaho and nationally starts with turnout. We're at historic levels of turnout and a level of interest in the election that we've not seen in at least since the 2008 election nationally. And it looks like turnout in Idaho is going to be very high. And of course, this is a unique and possibly never to be repeated, who knows, instance where so many people have already voted before we even got to election day. And that changes the logic of how you think about the races and when they're done. I noticed that when we were talking about the national map a minute ago, that sometimes it looks like Trump's ahead, and those might be because the easier votes to start with in the states where voting has stopped is with the people who voted in person today. So when the county clerks and the election officials in these other states start to do their absentee and mail-in ballots, you may see that lead change because the Republicans tend to be the people who showed up today.
Is there anything that you can glean from the makeup of the folks that did vote absentee, that did early voting? The national networks are trying to put a label on the demographic of the person that does vote absentee, saying maybe a little older, maybe a little more Democrat. Anything that you've been able to ascertain here in the Gem State?
No, I don't have any data specific to Idaho about that myself. I will say that before the pandemic, it would have been common to assume that the people coming forward to ask for absentee ballots would be primarily those serving in the military or perhaps in some business role where they're overseas, and those votes tended to trend Republican. However, during the pandemic, I think we saw lots of people requesting absentee ballots or voting early for a variety of reasons, including concerns about COVID and not wanting to go to a polling place or not wanting to wait a long time in a line for a polling place. Kim's too young to remember long lines at the polling places here in Ada County, but the fast-growing parts of Ada County, particularly to the west, have often had long lines as the growth leads to a lot of people who show up the day of the election to register. So there have often been lines in those western Ada County districts.
Yes, I guess I was too young to remember. Dr. Witt, thank you. I seem to be getting younger as the night goes on. I kind of like it. But Dr. Witt, talk to me about, the early voting and the turnout and the absentee ballots, and then just the turnout today. So we're telling people this is historic turnout. So does that mean that we're going to see some counties turn more of a pink shade, or, what does that mean in terms of the overall results for Idaho? What can we get anything out of this?
I'm not sure. I think that Brian with his map had some good points earlier about the Idaho counties. I would look to see Ada County edging closer to a majority Democrat vote, but that's not a for sure thing. It's likely to be very close. Traditionally, Latah County and Blaine County are the other two likely for sure blue counties in Idaho in presidential elections. It's been quite a while since we've had other counties in the Panhandle vote Democratic for president, but that has happened. We're talking maybe 30 years ago. So it's been quite a while. Of course, historically, the Panhandle had a lot of Democratic voters, those that traditionally worked in timber mining and the timber industries, a lot of union members, sort of lunch bucket Democrats that at one time were a sizable presence in Idaho politics. Starting around 1976 through 1980 and forward, though, we've seen the number of Democrats elected to the state legislature from the Panhandle go down pretty consistently. So it's not common these days to see a lot of Democrat votes in Northern Idaho.
The makeup of the state legislature over the last 10 or so years has changed a bit. It has moved a little closer to the middle. Obviously, as one of the reddest states in the union, we are heavily, something like 70% Republican to Democrat in the House and the Senate. What will you be looking for as far as the state races go?
Yeah, I think the percentage is maybe closer to 80% Republican in the legislature. But what we've seen in the last decade or so is that legislative districts in Ada County that used to be reliably Republican have begun sending Democratic legislators to the state legislature. I think that we'll continue to see that slow growth in Democratic elected legislators from the city, primarily from precincts and districts that lie within the city of Boise. One of the most competitive districts in the state is probably District 14, which lies a little to the west, where the vote margins there are often within 5-10%. So that will be one of the races to watch. But we already know the answer to who's going to be in the legislature for about 30% of the seats. That it may be 25%. I'm sorry, I've lost that detail. But those are races where there is no opponent in the general election. So all but one of those, I believe, in recent years has been only one Democratic unchallenged seat holder. The rest are Republicans where there's no Democrat in the general election.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Stephanie Witt, we're going to continue to ask you if you wouldn't stay with us tonight because there is much to unpack to unpack. And as soon as we get our first numbers dump coming up in about 20 minutes, we're going to ask you to kind of unravel that for us. But Kim, it is kind of interesting. You being from Eastern Idaho know as well as anyone, Eastern Idaho is dead red right there, not far from the Utah border. And that doesn't appear to be changing at all tonight. Mike Simpson is at home, of course, running to retain his seat in Congress. He's at home. Most pundits believe that he will win comfortably over Mr. Swisher. The other big race that we're watching is the one for the Senate with Jim Risch going against Paulette Jordan. Again, the pundits are saying that the senator had about a 20-point lead going into the election. And then, of course, Russ Fulcher and Rudy Soto. And that, according to Soto's polls, appears to be maybe the closest of all three of those congressional races. So those will be something that I know Brian and you will be keeping a very close eye on tonight.
Well, Mark, you're talking about some of these bigger results that we'll be looking for. Of course, the U.S. Senate Jim Risch and Paulette Jordan. Interesting that the Spokesman Review was saying that Risch holds one of the safest seats in the Senate. I mean, we're talking what, 60% that he would lead, and pretty much has a safe bet. But it will be interesting to see how much votes Paulette Jordan will pick up. Of course, she ran for governor against Brad Little in 2018. So it'll be interesting to see if her name recognition perhaps will buy her more votes this time around than what she got. And I know it's obviously for a different seat, so you can't really compare apples to apples, but that's one thing I'll be watching for tonight.
You think about how small the state of Idaho is compared to the rest of the country, right? We've got 4 electoral votes, we've got 4 congressional members, and yet Jim Risch and Mike Simpson have 2 of the highest seats of power of anyone in Congress. And I don't use those words lightly, and it's not hyperbole with Jim Risch as the chair of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and of course in the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, and then Mike Simpson in Appropriations, and then of course don't forget about Mike Crapo with Small Business and Banking. I mean, these are positions of power that the state would lose if there is a freshman senator or representative that took their seat, and that is not lost on a lot of Idaho voters.
You mentioned Mike Simpson, born and raised in East Idaho, got his start on the Blackfoot City Council, worked his way up, and as you mentioned, the committee assignments that he has in Washington, D.C., it's jurisdiction over funding for a lot of industry that's very important to Idaho, the Department of Energy, the Department of Interior, the Forest Service, our national
parks. And once a dentist,
parks.
always a dentist, right? I mean, it's like being in the Army or a Marine. Once you're out of the service, you're always still a Marine and a soldier. So does he still pull teeth? I will
have to. I will see if I can get his campaign press secretary on the line, and maybe we can ask that. We'll break in, Mark, as soon as we get the answer.
Okay, I can tell you what, I think nights like this for Congressman Mike Simpson is a little like pulling teeth. I'm sure of that.
But then you have Aaron Swisher, his opponent, and we had him. They were the only ones to debate on KTVB. Swisher has never held a public office, but he is pretty energetic about wanting to represent Idaho for that district in Congress. Of course, his big background, if you will, is economics. He is not from Idaho, but he came to Idaho to attend Boise State, and after completing Boise State, he went on to work for Micron. And so he is passionate, and he thinks that he would be a good voice to represent Idaho in Washington, D.C.
I was going to throw in some numbers.
You bet.
The last time those two ran against each other, Simpson and Swisher, 60% of the votes went to Simpson, 39.3% went to Swisher. So they have some history here when it comes to this. And as you mentioned, the safest seat, Risch, 65%. When he ran for office in 2014, he got 65% of the vote. So yeah, they're getting pretty dominant numbers when it comes to these positions at the nation's capital.
But that's what's going to make the Fulcher-Soto race so close, right, Brian? I mean, How many Fulcher spots have you seen in the last 2 weeks compared to Rudy Soto?
Right.
Yeah, not too many. And Russ Fulcher's been pretty quiet over the last several weeks.
Yeah, he did not want to debate.
No.
But again, Jim Risch turned down our invitation as well. But that is going to be really interesting to see if this first-timer in Rudy Soto, who grew up in the Treasure Valley, a minority, also a military member, and that is going to be a really interesting race, and seeing where he does do well, because he did stand in the middle between Trump and Biden, and in those spots he said, no matter if you're voting for the president or for Joe Biden, I want to be your representative.
Yeah, and Rudy Soto talked a lot about on his campaign website and in those ads, talking about he is running for health care, and talked about the loss of, I believe it was his father, because of a pre-existing health condition. And so Rudy's pretty energetic, isn't he? The Soto is pretty energetic. Wasn't he the candidate that was kind of running around Idaho a little bit in an RV?
He's tried to hit every county.
Yeah, tried to hit every county. I think a lot of people could relate to him, obviously, with his military background. He's the son of a Mexican immigrant, first-generation college graduate. I mean, he's fired up for this campaign. I wish that they would have come onto KTVB and debate. I think that would have been a very lively one to see.
He's been very active on social media as well. He's taken the reins of that. So yeah, he's been trying to put himself out there, because as you mentioned, sometimes just that R by your name, that's all you need. So he wants people to know who he is, where he comes from, and why he's running for office. And it's kind of been, as we talked about, Mark, Russ Fulcher has been pretty quiet. That's obviously kind of his ploy right now, not to engage and be involved. So we'll see how that plays out. I was looking at some of the numbers there. There's really nothing to base that on.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, it's his first time, his first re-election campaign as well.
But I think, and maybe Stephanie, Dr. Witt, we could bring in on this conversation, because you have Russ Fulcher, Dr. Witt, who is far right, correct? When his time in the state legislature, he was, pretty far right in the GOP there. And then you have Rudy Soto, who's positioning himself as a moderate Democrat. That's obviously very smart campaign strategy on his part, perhaps to maybe persuade some of those central Republicans to maybe vote for him. What's the likelihood of that? A snowball's chance, or what do you think?
I'm still trying to decide if there are still moderate Republicans anywhere. I think he may have, I think he's trying to talk to the voter who's not particularly attached to either party, but is looking for someone that they perceive to be, a solid representative in Congress. And that is the one of the two districts that Idaho has where we've seen a Democrat in this century be chosen by that district. But when I look at the recent votes, I just don't see a lot of predictable win here for Soto. That'd be kind of interesting if he pulls off an upset. But when I look at the first congressional district going all the way up to the Panhandle, there's only one Democrat from that whole stretch. And that's the Democrat from District 5 in Latah County. So, there's not a big base of Democratic voters, and so I don't know. I don't think it looks that good. However, he obviously has a lot of money, and he's done a lot of media buys down here in the Treasure Valley, and his commercials have really been airing frequently, and that may help introduce him to a set of voters. But this is a pretty Republican congressional district. If he pulls it off, that would really be a surprising upset.
It would. Speaking of Russ Fulcher, he has been a former board member of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. We've seen the Idaho Freedom Foundation involved in a lot of the reaction to the statewide shutdown, businesses being closed. So do you think that bodes well for Russ Fulcher, who's seeking his second term in this to represent Idaho in the U.S. House District 1? So do you think that Fulcher's ties to the Freedom Foundation, his ties to the far right, do you think that will actually probably gain some votes this go around?
It's probably not going to hurt him in that district. He's he was a longtime member of the state legislature. He has the power of the incumbency, the access to the resources that members of Congress have to run their office and to keep themselves in contact with the constituents in the district. So I think those things help Fulcher. But if you're ever going to be vulnerable as an incumbent, it's probably in your first full term. So if there's a good chance of kind of knocking him off, it would probably be this time and not after he's established himself term after term as an incumbent.
All right. Dr. Witt, I want to get into the commercial spots and the negative ads in a moment. But first, some news. The Associated Press has called the race for Jim Risch and also has called Idaho and its 4 electoral votes for Donald Trump. Not a surprise, as we mentioned, in either case, but Senator Jim Risch is going back to Congress to continue in his leadership role there. And so you can see, obviously, Brian, how much Idaho 1% reporting?
1% reporting, and 87% of that 1% going to Senator Jim Risch, 12% going to Paulette Jordan.
That seems awfully early.
Well,
to
it's
call
1%.
The race.
Yeah, it seems early, but you can see how those numbers are leaning already. It's a big chunk of numbers, and just 1%. We can start to see some of these start to pay off a little bit. You can see Payette County here. That's kind of where we're seeing some of these early numbers. And I know that Joe was telling us that Ada County is starting to put some of their numbers together. We should see probably, like we said, a big numbers drop here coming up in about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm kind of watching to see what's going on with Joe Paris at Ada County Elections Office. But right now, we're looking at Payette County, kind of showing us where that 1% is coming from.
So the AP is basing it on the voters of Payette County.
According to AP,
congratulations, Payette County. You have now become the battleground county.
Big time,
in
Payette
the state
County.
of Idaho.
I mean, I'm just thinking.
The canary in the coal mine.
Well, I'm thinking, if you're Paulette Jordan's campaign, if you're Paulette Jordan, they called this race, the Associated Press, 2 minutes after the polls closed up north?
Okay, yes, she does have some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, this is obviously going to be a closer number, you would see. We haven't seen Ada County or some of the states that have gone toward the blue a little bit. There's a lot of Democratic votes out there still to be had and processed. We'll see how that plays out. But at 87%, that's going to be tough to overcome in a red state like Idaho.
All right, what about the other races with 1% in? I don't think we're gonna make it official, but what about Fulcher and Soto?
Fulcher has not been called, but we're looking at 86% there, with Soto at 12% so far. And again, looking at just Payette County, we'll see some of these numbers kind of come in. This is going to refresh every 60 seconds, so we'll see how that plays out. Nothing yet when it comes to Swisher and Simpson, but as you mentioned, Fulcher and Soto, that's how things are lining up right now. That's, again, just one section, that's just one county right now reporting, Payette County. We'll see, again, how this plays out. Polls just closed officially across the entire state 5 minutes ago. North Idaho just closed about 5 minutes ago, which is now we're going to start to see some of these numbers statewide start to roll in, and it's going to be coming fast and furiously here in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll hopefully see some of these colors populate on this map. We'll kind of take you around the state and see what's happening where.
All right, let's try to get to Joe Paris. If Joe's connection is still up, let's take you down to the Ada County Elections headquarters. We said that after the polls in North Idaho closed, it was going to be a veritable beehive of activity there. Are the bees buzzing?
Oh, well, you could say the bees are buzzing, Mark. Yeah, that's right. On the other side of this class right now, there is one team that's working to process those finals absentee ballots. Of course, all the ballots that were dropped off in those blue boxes across Ada County, those were cleared out right at 8 o'clock. So the absentee ballots that were collected right there at the deadline still have to be processed here. Of course, in the room beyond that, though, they're starting to get the shipments, the deliveries from all the precincts across Ada County, and they're starting to process those ballots and those ballot boxes and really starting to tabulate what we actually had today. Right now, though, we saw Ada County right at 9 o'clock. They actually posted a significant amount of results online. Of course, we talked about the record amount of absentee ballots that came in over the last several weeks. Of course, all the early voting that was done, we had reported to you that more than half of the registered voters here in Idaho, here in Ada County and in Idaho, they'd already cast their ballot before Election Day. and they smashed so many records this year. There was such a obvious insight, of course, on the absentee voting with the coronavirus protocols, people wanting to avoid going to the polls. Again, though, we really are starting to see a lot of those results coming out right now, and they are meaningful results. In years past, presidential cycles in the past, we would see those absentee ballots posted about now, 9:15, 9:30, but just the amount that we got this year, you can actually really get an indication in Ada County of where some things are going. If we're watching a lot of the races around Ada County, I know I have my computer up here on the Ada County election site. One race we're watching here tonight is District 15, Mark. That was won by Senator Martin by only 6 votes back in the last election. Tonight, there's a chance that could flip from Republican to Democrat, so we're keeping a close eye on that. But as we got a lot of votes coming in here in Ada County, a pretty significant drop right at 9 o'clock.
All right, we want to get over, thank you, Joe. We want to get over to Brian right now. Ada County numbers are coming in.
They are coming in. We're starting to see some of those numbers right now as you look at Ada County. Again, just 1%, just minimal numbers, but 55% right now. 97,473 votes for Joe Biden, 74,143 votes for President Donald Trump. Even Kanye West getting about 1% with nearly 600 votes. Pierce also on nearly 500. Blankenship at 255. Looking back, last 2016, the voting, how it spread out in Ada County, 93,000, a little more than that, almost 94,000 went to Donald Trump, with Hillary Rodham Clinton getting about 75,000 votes out of Ada County. So again, very early, just 1%, but right now, Ada County has started to take on a little bit of a blue hue right now.
Yeah, not surprising. As you mentioned, North Boise skews blue, and so does Blaine County, and then you've got a couple of counties up in North Idaho that do as well. So that's not surprising, but again, okay,
still early.
Let's keep it real right here.
Yeah, exactly.
As the kids would say, 1%.
They used to say that, Mark. They used to say that.
They used to say that?
Yeah, they don't say that anymore.
Do they say numbers dump?
They do.
I was going to say, if I hear one more numbers dump out
I
of
can't
you
wait
guys.
for the next numbers dump. That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, where is this numbers dump
I
coming
got a question.
We just had one.
I got a question. As long as we're continuing to wait for the numbers to come in, I've got to ask Brian a question.
Yes.
Is your neck starting to get chafed?
It is.
Because it's the first time I've seen you in a tie in about 10 months.
It's really starting to scratch in the back here. I know.
Yeah.
And I had to go glasses today, too, because some of these things are hard. There's hard buttons down here I have to really kind of see. But I'm going with it.
Did you still know how to tie it? Or did
I went double. I went
Andrea
double
tied
tonight.
that, didn't
no,
she?
no. I still know how to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you missed it, though, earlier, you guys, at home. He was running around the newsroom with his face mask on, looking pretty casual. I said, are you going to dress up tonight, Brian? Because it was a pretty casual look that you had. I mean, this 208 thing is really starting to...
Well, yeah.
It is. We want to bring back Dr. Witt to give us some sensible perception and breakdown of this 1% and the fact that in Payette County, for some reason, the Associated Press decided that after 1% of the ballots had been counted, they decided to hand the election over to Jim Risch. What do you make of that?
That's very early. Like I said earlier, I do think he's likely to win, but 1%, one county, that's not a very good look. I believe that in the 2018 gubernatorial race, Jordan got about 41% of all the votes she got from Ada County. So without the Ada County returns in there for that, it's going to look a lot worse than it will when all the votes come in. So the fact that we see, for example, Ada County looking blue right now may be because they had all of those early votes ready to go and were able to feed them through the machine right away. They're probably still receiving the ballots from the precincts. Someone has to bring them in, right? So those may come later, the people who voted today. And if the same trend holds here in Idaho, where Democrats voted earlier and Republicans tended to show up at the polls today, then, that may be why it looks like Ada County jumped blue. I think there's a good chance that we may end up with Ada County turning blue, but it's probably going to be close.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a nice segue, Stephanie, into the latest numbers that Brian just pulled up.
To illustrate that, Dr. Witt, I just want to show you. So we're getting more numbers in. Ada County has now entered the race here. As you can see, The big race now 54% for Jordan, 44% for Risch. That's statewide total, yet they're still calling it for Risch. So we'll see how this plays out. Again, very early. It's too early to call it at 1%. We know that Risch has not seen all the numbers have come in for him, nor have we seen all the numbers come in for Paulette Jordan. But just to show you how quickly and how easily these things change, now with 2 counties reporting and only 1% of them, we already see this flip-flop again where Jordan has now jumped out in front at 54%. So if we can't put anything behind this 1% right now, this is way too early, but it is fun to kind of ride this roller coaster with you for the next hour and a half or maybe 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out.
You know what it reminds me of, Kim?
What's that?
4 years ago, you and I were covering the election at the Democratic headquarters.
Dee was at the Republicans.
That's right. We were at the Grove Hotel, and I think you remember Cherie Buckner Webb, who is one of the leading Democrats in the state, if not in the entire Northwest. And she was so excited, I remember, when Hillary Clinton had a fairly large lead about this time of night. So you know how things can change.
Yeah, and do you remember being in that room,
I
Mark?
do.
I mean, talk about whew, and everybody was mass exodus out the doors.
Those
I mean,
balloons that had been flying all night long, somehow, some way, just dropped straight to the ground.
They did, yeah.
We're getting some more numbers in right now. We're looking at Simpson and Swisher numbers coming in. This again, Twin Falls County reporting 64% for Simpson, 33% for Swisher. You can see about 4,000 votes for Swisher there. But then if we go over into Bonneville County, that's kind of more in Simpson's territory anyway. 69% right now for Simpson with 28% for Swisher. So statewide, about 67 to 30%. And then the presidential shakedown right now for the across the state of Idaho with Twin and Bonneville entering. We have Biden at 52%, but still already calling it for Trump at 45%. West, Pierce, and Blankenship bringing up the rear there. You can see how these numbers are shifting. Like I said, now we're starting to see a few more reports. Still only about 1% in Ada County and in Payette County. And you can see how everything's 92% now. We're looking at 144 votes for Trump in Payette. And jumping down to Twin Falls County, 57% for President Trump, 40% for Vice President Biden. So you see how everything is looking here. We're going to keep an eye on this. And again, every 4 or 5 minutes, we're expecting these numbers to change, these colors to pop in. But if we look back, we are going to see a possibility of Latah still turning blue and Blaine County still turning blue. And looking at Valley County and also keeping an eye on Ada County, like we mentioned, those are the spots that could be different than the way things were back in 2016.
Mark, you mentioned earlier you wanted to talk about some of the campaign ads, and did you talk about kind of the negativity of some of those ads? Because I think our TV market, we have it fairly lucky, you know, compared to some of these swing states. I never will forget. I happened to be in Florida in October of what was that, 08, and every single commercial, every single commercial was a political commercial. I feel so sorry for those people living in those swing states.
Well, and I'd like to bring in our resident political scientist again, Dr. Witt, to kind of address that a little bit. You'll remember a couple of years ago, the Tommy Alquist and Governor Little and Raul Labrador campaign and how much mud was slinging at the end of that one. And then what did you make of the Paulette Jordan, the ad that came out without any announcer voice, just the sad music and showing Jim Risch?
Well, it was a lullaby.
It was a lullaby.
It was a lullaby, which obviously was playing on the fact that Risch, fell asleep in the impeachment hearings, which he took a lot of flack for.
How does that play here among Idahoans, the negative ads, the ad slinging? We saw that in a number of campaigns here in the past.
I think that, that one of Risch's vulnerabilities is that he is definitely a part of the establishment. He's been in office for a number of years, and he's been a senator for a number of years. And I think this ad was trying to point out the downsides of having someone in office continuously for that much time. I thought I was impressed with the quality of the ads. Like their production values, both the negative ads and the Paulette Jordan ads, I thought were surprisingly good. Risch's campaign ads for him, the positive ones about himself, were also very well done. But I thought that one was a particularly effective jab at him. I'm not sure it's going to pay off at the polls. It may, but I think it was a good way to kind of highlight, that sort of that question, like, how long has this guy been in office, kind of thing. That may be able to sway some voters who are tired of the status quo.
Yeah, we had a number of viewers tell us that they asked us to pull the ad because they felt like it was so hard to watch. But
Which ad, Mark?
For others, it struck a nerve.
Which one? Sorry, which one in particular are you
The
talking about?
Paulette Jordan, the lullaby thing.
The lullaby one.
Mm-hmm.
Really? We had viewers asked to pull that.
We did, and of course, as you know,
right.
Stephanie and Kim, we can't do that. We are not allowed by FCC and FTC elections regulations from editing or pulling or altering a political ad. So that's out of our control, folks. Sorry.
Hey, Stephanie, I have a question for you. Talking about demographics of voter turnout, would you say that young people are really going to be represented well during this election cycle? Will we see other voting blocks? What do you think the turnout's going to be like when it comes to demographics and generations?
Well, it certainly looks like it's going to be a banner year for young voters, maybe reaching that high level of participation that we saw in the 2008 election when Barack Obama was elected the first time. And, we've seen a lot of, well, I heard someone saying this morning, a pundit talking on one of the national radio shows that these first-time voters, early voters, 18, 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, that they've been civically involved their whole life. A lot of them, they've been interested in issues around guns, and they've been protesting different things, and so they've been kind of flexing their political muscles already, and they seem highly energized around this election, and just like turnout overall seems to be high. I think that we may see some record numbers of young voters.
Yeah, I did a feature story on the 208 last week on Babe Vote, that initiative, nonpartisan, nonprofit, trying to get the young people out, started by a 16-year-old sophomore, one of the starters, 16-year-old sophomore at Boise High, too young to vote, but he says, this is my civic duty, I'm going to get people registered. He single-handedly registered 400 people. Babe Vote, last I checked, registered 2,000 young people, including some football players at Boise State University. But so Stephanie, what is kind of in your political science classes speaking of Boise State, what gets the young people excited? What are you guys talking about, and what will they be looking for in this election?
Well, I teach mostly graduate students, so I'm not sure I'm a good barometer of our undergraduates and what they care about. I think that I can speak generally that I think students are a lot more interested in climate change than maybe most of our elected officials in Idaho. That they're interested in what it means, what can be done. They're interested in environmental science questions like that. What are the best ways to preserve and protect the environment that we care about so much? So I know that's one thing that they really care about.
All right, along those lines, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but here are a couple of first-time voters. Are we able to focus that? I don't know if we can.
Probably not, Mark.
Yeah, probably not. That's probably a little close, isn't it, Ray? How about here?
Well,
can we do that? Here's a couple of first-time voters. These are the twins. That's Grace and Alexa Johnson, and they turned 18 in September. First-time voters among, I think NBC quoted today, 17 to 20% of the voters today were first-timers, and these two Johnson girls are among them.
Well, we keep talking about the 2008 election when President Obama was elected. That was the highest turnout since 1972 when the voting age was dropped to 18. So yeah, young voters made a difference then. And as you mentioned, Dr. Witt, the generation that's growing up now has had to deal with a lot of gun issues. And just as a reminder, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas seniors that had to live through that shooting, 2018, they are voting in their first presidential election this year. So that's probably top of mind for a lot of people, because as they spread that message out across the nation, across the world via social media, there's a lot of people that kind of grabbed on that and the advocacy that came with it. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of these young voters taking it to heart and being very, very vigilant when it comes to voting their first election. I spoke to an 18-year-old just this evening who voted in her first election. She turned 18 in December, and it was very important to her. She voted, in fact, with her parents, Kim, for the very first time. They're voting all together, and it was very important for all of them to get out. So it's not just the young vote, but it's just everybody that is taking it upon themselves, because this one is important, because obviously it's right now.
All right, well, along those lines, Brian, go to your national map and show us what Florida has done since the last time we checked in on the national map in Florida, talking about those kids at the shooting in Florida.
Well, we're looking at 99% right now of Florida coming in, and it's 51 for President Trump, 48 for Vice President Biden still. Separation of about 350,000 votes. So still 29 electoral votes still up for grabs in Florida, but leaning toward Florida, or toward Trump. Not yet ready to call that yet. The AP is not yet ready to call that, as they are with Texas. So it's still too close. We'll see how that kind of plays out. Georgia also in that ballot at 16 electoral college votes, but Florida is the big one. They've played a big role.
So the AP isn't calling a place that has 99% of their votes.
No.
But they are calling a place that has 1% of their votes.
Exactly, because I think they kind of know which way we go a little bit more than maybe Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
What did I say, you guys? He has one of the safest seats in the U.S. Senate,
That's
quoting
right.
the spokesman review there.
Right. And
Speaking of Jim Risch.
Yeah, they're not wrong. For those of you watching us on our YouTube channel and also on KTVB.com, we want to tell you, reset here a little bit and tell you what's going to happen. I mentioned at the top of the hour that you're going to have kind of a behind-the-scenes look at how we roll. Do the kids still say that, Brian? How we roll?
Nope, they don't.
They don't say that?
They don't say that.
I do. And so coming up in about 2 minutes, right there, in about 2 minutes, we're going to transparently reset and do our live cut-in on what we call the mothership, Channel 7, and we are tag teaming tonight all night long with NBC News. And so we're going to do our 9:26 cut-in, and so we'll kind of stop here so you can see us kind of reset. Brian's going to dab just a little bit of powder on his nose, and then we're going to do that. In the meantime, this is a live look-in at the Ada County Elections Office. And do you guys remember when we showed this same live shot?
Yeah.
About 2 hours ago, there was one person sitting at a table, and there were none of those boxes with the ballots in there. My, how times have changed just in the last 2 hours.
But hats off to all those election workers, huh?
I'll say thank you, guys. Big hats off. We appreciate all of your hard work. These folks are going to be there well into the morning hours, aren't they?
Yeah, I was going to say, how late do you think they're going to be there tonight?
Yeah, they're going to be there way past 2 o'clock. And, you know, Idaho is not one of those states that isn't going to be able to make the call until tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, unlike some other states. I'm talking to you. I'm looking at you, Pennsylvania.
Arizona.
Maybe Alaska. But we are going to be able to make the call. That's because Alaska's polls don't close until 1 o'clock in the morning, our time. And so they won't be able to make the call until about 6 in the morning. All right, we are 10 seconds away from cutting into the network. And so stay with us, everybody. We're about to do this. Do the kids say do it?
They do.
All right, the polls have been closed in the state for 26 minutes, and the results are beginning to come in. Let's send it over to Brian Holmes and the touchscreen, tracking the numbers as they come in. Brian.
Some small numbers to deal with, but already being called for the U.S. Senate race with Jim Risch, the incumbent, running against Paulette Jordan. We're looking at a race, though, it's shaping up to be pretty close right now. 1% of Idaho putting out their numbers, but AP has already called it in favor of Risch, holding a 49 to 48% lead right now across the state. Payette County is reporting 87% going to Risch. Twin Falls at 57%. We're going over here to Bingham County at 70% for Senator Jim Risch. Bonneville County, 62%. And then back over here toward Ada County, which is kind of leaning toward blue right now at 52% for Paulette Jordan, leading by 98,000 votes to 83,000 votes. And so this is how we're going to watch this play out for the rest of the evening when it comes to the Senate race, when it comes to the House seats that are up for grabs as well, with Fulcher leading right now with 1% again. Ada County leaning toward Fulcher, 58% to 39%. For Soto. And then if we go over to House District 2, Swisher, 49% over Simpson at 48%. Most of that coming out of Ada County right now at 62% for Swisher. But Simpson picking up a lot of votes in eastern side of the state, 75, 69% in Bonneville County, and Twin Falls getting 64%. Again, 3% reporting in Twin. Statewide also looking at just 3% reporting so far. So this is how this is going to play out. Looking at the presidential race, well, we're still looking at 77% of the state now going to Trump. Again, Ada County was blue for just a little bit, but 84% now leaning toward the president, with Biden picking up just 10% so far of Ada County. And you can see the other counties as well. Twin Falls, 57. Bingham County at 70 for President Trump, 27% for Biden, 60% in Bonneville County. A lot of votes yet to be counted. Way too early to call this, although AP has already called the state of Idaho for President Trump and Senator Risch retaining his seat in the Senate. That's, again, according to the AP. We're just going to kind of watch this play out for the rest of the evening. Mark?
All right, to set the scene, we are going to continue with our digital show. You can watch that right now on KTVB.com or the KTVB YouTube channel. We've got Joey Prechtel in Canyon County. We've got Joe Paris at the Ada County Elections Office. That is a beehive of activity right now. Kim's in the studio. We've got Katya Stepovic out in the field as well. There is the Ada County Elections Office. So we're going to continue our digital show, and then we'll see you at 10 o'clock.
The mothership. So much stress on the mothership.
A lot of pressure to do that. So those of you at home, you just got to look inside the window at how this job rolls. So,
I wish we had windows.
I wish we had windows, yeah. we do need windows. All right, but again, we're gonna stay on the digital platform on KTVB.com and the YouTube channel for about another 15 minutes. Then we're going to have to retreat, go back into our bunkers. We're going to reset, and then we're going to come out guns a-blazing at 10 o'clock for a half hour of local news before giving it back to the network. And then, again, our cut-ins will continue at 56 and 26 after and before the hour.
Hey, we got another swing, Mark.
Okay.
Ada County. You can see Biden picking up some votes there in Ada County. This just happened. Now 2% reporting, and we have Biden at 55%, President Donald Trump at 42%, Kanye West still holding on to just under 600 votes coming out of Ada County. But statewide, Kanye's got almost 839 votes. But as you can see, everything's kind of shaping up now. Cassia County starting to come in as well for Trump. Leaning heavily toward Trump, as can be expected. Again, what we have seen over the years, a lot of red coming across the state of Idaho, with only 2 counties that have been majority in the blue and for the Democratic Party. That would be Blaine County. We're waiting on those results to come in. And then also Latah County. This is, again, based on 2016. And then in 2012, we also saw some numbers that were kind of a shade off the dark red in Valley County. So that was back in 2012, but in 2016, Valley County a little bit more, about 1,000 votes separated between the Republican Donald Trump and the Democratic challenger of Hillary Clinton. That was the separation there in Valley County. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that. 2% again, still very early. The state's already been called, though, from the AP for Donald Trump. And we will see how the counties will break down, because there's still a lot of race left, a lot of numbers yet to come in. The biggest races that we're going to be watching, besides the presidential one, is the Senate race as that plays out. Also 2%. Jordan just a little bit above Risch, already been called by the AP. And as you take a look at Fulcher, still looking at a 1% in the House District 1 race at 58% for Russ Fulcher over Soto, and Swisher leading still over Simpson, with, again, most of that coming out of Ada County.
Both of the parties are having sort of online events. Normally on an election night, we would be, as I mentioned earlier, at both of the party headquarters, the GOP, usually at the Boise Riverside Hotel. The Democrats typically are downtown at a place. That's not the case this year, and so we understand that both parties are going to do some sort of live Zoom cut-in, and as soon as they crank that up, if our control room and our production assistants can give me an idea of when that happens, we'd like to dip into those, because we understand that Paulette Jordan is at the Dems and that Jim Risch is going to be at the GOP. For how long, we don't know, Kim.
Yeah, it just different landscape.
It's 2020 still, isn't it?
It is 2020 still. We
Okay.
are in the middle of a pandemic, which is why I'm sitting up here on this desk by myself. You're 6 feet over there. You're 6 feet over there, Brian.
I'm more like 15 to 20
You are
feet.
more like, yeah, actually
And-
we are
and
more like.
Brian's more like 15 to
But
20
can I
feet,
just
too.
say, Mark, welcome back.
Well,
we haven't been together since March in the studio.
And welcome back to you as well. It has not been easy over the last 7 months. Thanks to all of you guys for hanging with us and understanding the difficulties of doing television news during a pandemic. Our crew has been, our entire team has been absolutely incredible from the top down. So I want to thank everybody for hanging with us.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Dr. Stephanie Witt, because, and if we can, Ray in the control room, if we have a way to lay Brian's map over what Dr. Witt is saying, or maybe even a split screen, that'd be great. But I've got to ask you now, as you continue to look at the numbers coming in, like on your screen right now, where are you focused?
Well, I have a lot of interest in the presidential race, like most Americans, and so I'm interested to see how this goes. Florida and Texas, Florida's no surprise, but the fact that Texas is within reach of Biden is really quite remarkable. That shows a lot of a surge in Democratic voting in the state of Texas. So that's to me very interesting. I'm assuming that I don't know the county by county in Texas, but I'm assuming we're still waiting on Harris County. I believe that's the county where Houston is.
It is, yes. And Dallas County. It appears as if Harris and Dallas County are voting for Biden, but that leaves a whole lot of rest of Texas to go red.
Austin and San Antonio are also leaning blue.
Correct.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a little more purple than maybe it was in the last several presidential elections. And Arizona is another place that I think is interesting to watch on that presidential map. The thing that's disappointing, I think, to many voters is that we are almost certainly going to have to wait for the upper Midwest states and Pennsylvania to finish counting all their ballots. This is a rare situation where Idaho is really out ahead of most other states in passing that legislation to allow the county clerks to get the ballots ready. So we'll know tonight. That is not how it's working in a lot of other states. And so they had to wait until today. And, most counties don't have a lot of extra money. And so it's probably been quite a burden to try to hustle up the personnel and the technology to deal with this onslaught of mail-in ballots and early voting.
What's your sense, Stephanie, that if it does, as some of the pundits say, comes down to Pennsylvania with their 20 electoral votes, and that becomes the swing state, to end all swing states, when do you think this presidential election can finally be made official?
Well, I mean, there's the counting of the ballots, and then there's all the lawsuits about the ballots.
Right.
So, I don't know how long the lawsuit part is going to take. There have been a number of suits filed throughout the country to challenge the creative ways that states have tried to adjust to the pandemic. Most of the suits have been brought by advocates from the Republican Party challenging making it easier to bring ballots to the county or to mail them in. A lot of fighting over, does the ballot have to be received by Election Day, postmarked by Election Day? Each state has a little different law about how long they can wait to receive the ballot. So there are a lot of moving parts. I would love it if we could know, within the next day or two, as Pennsylvania gets through counting all their ballots. I don't know how many pending lawsuits there are going to be in Pennsylvania and how long it will take those to move through the state and possibly federal courts.
But no hanging chads this year.
No, I was a poll worker in many elections ago. We had trained a bunch of poll workers here at Boise State. A lot of students participated. And so I was down at the courthouse and volunteered. And, you get sworn in as a, election person, judge, I think is the right word. And we were still using those kind of ballots where there could be, where somebody would halfway make an indentation through the punch card, but not quite. And so we would have to hold it up and decide whether their intent was that it be this hole or that hole. It was fascinating.
Fascinating. And a little bit like, as we alluded to earlier, Dr. Mike Simpson pulling teeth.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Witt, thank you so much. 4 years ago, Kim, going back to 4 years ago and the vibe that we felt then compared to now, it feels the same watching Brian work the map, right? The presidential race is too early to call. Nip and tuck. Nobody can say who's going to win right now, but the vibe certainly is a lot different.
And then, Brian, were you trying to get our attention? Did you have some?
No, I was just kind of looking at, so the votes, we've been looking at the popular vote all night, but this is the Electoral College vote, and right now it's stacking up at 209 for Biden, 118 for Trump. Still a lot of states out there that have not been called, of course. There is Nevada, there's California, Washington, and Oregon. They've all been called for Biden, but Arizona's still up for grabs. Texas and Florida, of course, and Pennsylvania is, as we mentioned, still up for grabs, and there are 20 electoral votes. It all could come down to Pennsylvania, and if we look at where they're standing right now in Pennsylvania, well, it's 56% towards Trump, 42 for Biden, only about 49% reporting there in Pennsylvania. So still a lot of room there to get through, a lot of votes to get through, a lot of absentee. And as Dr. Witt said, Idaho did a great thing over this special session and over previous sessions to say, let's give our poll workers and our election offices a little more time because this pandemic is going to cause a lot of people to mail in their ballots, want to vote early. Let's let them process these ballots ahead of time so that we're not left waiting until Thursday or even Friday to determine who's the winner coming out of Idaho. Although, if you ask the AP, 1% is enough to tell us that we're leaning red already.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good time to, speaking of the turnout and the ballot counting and whatnot, maybe it's a good time to check back in the Joe Show. We've got Joey Prechtel, we've got Joe Paris out kind of monitoring Canyon County and Ada County. And I can see that Joe is getting at attention here, getting ready for his reporting. So we mentioned earlier, Joe, you're giving me the thumbs up. We mentioned earlier that you've been BFFs with Phil McGrain this election season. He's been so great to give you information. And he predicted pretty much smooth sailing tonight. Has that still been the case so far? Throughout the day, we didn't really hear any problems. So what's happening there right now, Joe?
Yeah, no reports of any issues here at Ada County Election Headquarters, Kim. It's been smooth sailing, and really a lot of the work was done ahead of time because of just the huge amount of absentee ballots that were sent in, of course, as well as people going to early vote. As we mentioned, Idaho, Ada County, they broke all kinds of records this year. Idaho past 1 million registered voters. When it's all said and done, county clerks think maybe 10,000, maybe more actually will register today. Of course, in Idaho, you can register at the polls on Election Day. Here in Ada County, I know they had at least several thousand do that today, which is not unique. It happens every presidential cycle. People get energized and they want to come out and they want to vote for the presidential race after not being registered before in a state. So really what they're continuing to do behind me is they're really wrapping up the rest of those absentee ballots that were picked up out of those drop boxes at 8 o'clock tonight. Of course, there were absentee ballots that made it organically through the Postal Service back to the election headquarters here this evening. So they're really finishing those up, and as we speak, they're starting to really put together the rest of the precinct data from the actual Election Day voting. Most of the deliveries, if not all the deliveries, are back here at Ada County election headquarters, and the volunteers are taking all the data, all the votes from the different precincts around the county, plugging them into the system, and that's when we keep seeing the updated tallies. One race I know we've been talking about tonight, District 15, the Senate race. We talked about it during the last cycle. Senator Fred Martin, he won by only 6 votes, and when we're looking at these results coming in right now, it looks like Senator Martin is actually up by 16 votes, a razor-thin margin. And of course, Senator Fred Martin, he's the incumbent there, running against a strong candidate in Rick Just. Again, not all the results are in right now, but at this hour, with a good chunk of the data in, 16 votes separate that one race. If that really would be the most vulnerable spot in the Idaho Senate, that would be a flip from Republican to Democrat if Fred Martin lost that race. But at this time, he's up by 16. So real close race there.
Every vote counts.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to wrap things up. But Joey Prechtel, we want to go to you in Canyon County. You're going to get the last word on our digital election special. About 2 minutes. Wrap things up for us tonight as we approach the 10 o'clock hour.
Well, Mark and Kim, election results here in Canyon County did just come out a little bit ago. Very preliminary. All we have is for absentee voting and early voting, but it's easy to see just kind of scanning over these documents right here, these numbers that, down the ballot, that pretty much right now Republicans have, strong leads in just about every single race that I could see. Again, just taking a quick look at it from President, U.S. Senate, House District 1, but the race between the incumbent Representative Russ Fulcher and his challenger Rudy Soto. So definitely a strong showing here in Canyon County from absentee voting as well as early voting for Republicans thus far. Altogether, though, today, 27,000, just around 27,000 people did vote in person. This was on top of the almost 38,000 absentee ballots that were released. Altogether, about 91,000 people voted in Canyon County. Now, if we look at the numbers for just pre-election day registration here in Canyon County, which is just over 110,000, then the turnout here in Canyon County would be about 81%. So definitely a very large turnout here in Canyon County. We are at the elections office right now where they are still counting ballots. Not sure how well you can see here through the windows, but it's definitely more results are going to keep coming in as the precincts keep bringing those ballots in. I've been seeing some action here and there. They have a system set up to where when a car shows up and they go out and retrieve those ballots and then start counting them. And so definitely going to be waiting to see the rest of the results. But as I said earlier, from the absentee ballots as well as early voting, Republicans definitely showing a strong showing so far. Back to you.
And this is always a great headline to use on election night. We have not heard of any voting issues or any kinks in the system in Idaho's 2 largest counties, something we have not been able to report in many of the previous election years, right, Kim?
Yeah, good to know. And it just shows you that these county clerks are really working hard with their staff to make sure that everything does go smoothly. And also no reports of any violence, and we're lucky for that. We saw regionally and nationally some businesses boarding up in anticipation of maybe some riots happening tonight, but none of that has been happening in Idaho, and so far no problems to report.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here on KTVB.com and our YouTube channel. But Kim, Brian, also Joey, a cast of thousands, really, if you include all of the Ada County and Canyon County and all of the county clerks and the poll workers and the election workers working. working election 2020. That'll do it for now. We'll leave you on this shot to take us up to 10 o'clock. We'll reset and see you at 10. So long for now.